The Devil's Muse. Daphne Antoinette knew there were places one should never tread. Places where shadows danced with secrets, and the air pulsed with promises as deadly as they were seductive. She had spent a lifetime guarding those places, balancing between the worlds of the living and the dead, with a skill that had made her one of the most powerful Voodoo priestesses in New Orleans. But power is never without a cost. One figure, the most feared and desired of all, had been watching her since she was a child, biding his time until she was ready. Papa Legba, the ancient lower of the Crossroads, a gatekeeper to realms beyond mortal comprehension, had offered her everything once, asking only for a smile in return. And now, he was back. This time his offer was darker, sweeter, more intoxicating than ever. All he wanted was her soul. Daphne finds herself ensnared in a deadly dance with the spirit who's waited centuries to claim her, his promises filling her mind with visions of power, immortality, and forbidden knowledge. But every whispered secret, every lingering touch, draws her closer to the edge of surrender, a place from which she may never return. The Devil's Muse, Papa Legba's seduction of Daphne Antoinette. Daphne Antoinette sat cross-legged on the worn rug in her ritual room, the air around her thick with incense and the quiet hum of power. She turned over a small black coin in her hand, feeling its smooth surface against her skin, her mind drifting back to the first time Papa Legba had given it to her. She could still remember his voice, low and warm, as he leaned close and handed her the coin when she was just a child. All he had asked in return was a smile. Now he was back. She could feel him lingering at the edges of the room, his presence thickening the air, filling it with the familiar scents of tobacco and molasses. She had learned over the years that this was just how Papa Legba was, watching, waiting, reappearing exactly when she thought he'd left her alone. But this time was different. She sensed an intensity, a purpose, an edge to his return that she couldn't ignore. "You're getting bolder, Legba," she murmured, letting the coin slip from her fingers. "You used to at least knock before coming in." A low, rich chuckle echoed through the room, and he stepped out from the shadows, his gaze fixed on her. Papa Legba's face softened with something that might have been affection, or perhaps something much darker, as he moved closer, his tall form exuding that dangerous, magnetic allure she had come to know so well. "You, my dear, invited me in long ago," he replied, his tone as smooth as silk. "And besides, it's time you and I discussed a little unfinished business." Daphne's lips curved into a half smile, one that held equal parts defiance and intrigue. "After all this time, you think I'm not aware of what you want?" His smile widened, his gaze dark and knowing. "Oh, I know you're aware, Daphne. But are you willing?" She met his gaze, feeling the thrill and dread settle over her all at once. Papa Legba had always had a way of tempting her, testing her limits, but she'd managed to keep her distance, her autonomy. Yet tonight something was different. He felt closer, more intense. This time he wasn't here to simply tease, he was here to claim. "You've grown strong, Daphne," he murmured, reaching out to gently trace a finger along her jaw. His touch was warm, electric, sending a shiver down her spine. "But there's something holding you back. You feel it, don't you? That lingering fear of embracing what you could become." She wanted to scoff, to push him away. But his words had always cut deep, slipping under her skin and into the places she kept hidden. "And what exactly do you think I'm afraid of, Legba?" "Letting go," he answered, leaning close until his breath was warm against her ear. giving yourself over to me, fully, without restraint. You've tasted power, but only as far as you feel safe. I want you to know what it's like to be bound to something greater." Daphne's fingers clenched, her eyes narrowing as she met his gaze. "And what do you want in return?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. He held her gaze, the air between them thick with the weight of his promise. "Everything. Your loyalty, your spirit, your very soul." For a long moment they stood in silence, each assessing the other. Daphne's pulse pounded in her ears, a thrumming beat that seemed to echo the dangerous energy of his words. She had spent years honing her powers, keeping herself grounded in the mortal realm. But the hunger in his eyes made her question whether that restraint had been a mistake. "And what do I gain?" she challenged, a faint smirk pulling at her lips. "Other than becoming your eternal muse, I suppose." Papa Legba's smile was slow, dark, dangerous. "Freedom," he whispered. "Freedom from limits, from mortal constraints. Together you and I could be unstoppable. You would command the spirits, the crossroads, even fate itself." Daphne's fingers drifted to the coin he had given her so long ago. She remembered the promises, the vision of power he had shown her as a child. And now, here he was, offering it all over again, but this time, with a price that went beyond anything she'd given before. "So I give you everything," she murmured, her tone wary, calculating. "And in return, I lose my humanity." Papa Legba leaned back, his gaze never leaving hers. "Humanity is a limit, a restraint. I'm offering you eternity, Daphne. A place at the crossroads with me, where mortal concerns no longer matter." She felt his words seep into her, wrapping around her like smoke, both seductive and suffocating. The thought of walking with him as his equal, of commanding forces beyond even her current understanding, was a thrill she could barely resist. But she knew there would be a cost she wasn't sure she was willing to pay. With a deep breath, Daphne looked back at him, her gaze fierce and unyielding. "And if I refuse?" He shrugged, his eyes gleaming. "Then you'll remain as you are. Powerful, yes, but bound by limits, always wondering what might have been." The coin glinted in her hand, the weight of his offer settling over her like a shroud. She could feel the crossroads calling her, the pull of the dark promise in his words. It was a choice she could not ignore, and the tension between them thickened as she felt the finality of this moment. With a measured breath, she met his gaze once more. "If I do this, Legba, I do it on my terms. I will not be your servant." A dark, approving smile crossed his lips. "Then you will be my equal, Daphne Antoinette." She hesitated only a moment longer before tucking the coin into her pocket, her decision made. A quiet resolve settled within her, knowing that she was stepping into a world of shadows that would reshape her forever. Papa Legba's gaze was steady, his expression triumphant but respectful, as he extended his hand toward her. With a slow, deliberate motion, Daphne took it. Together they moved toward the crossroads, her mortal life falling away with each step as the shadows enveloped them both. Daphne could feel the power coiling around her, binding her to him, marking the beginning of a destiny darker and more glorious than she had ever imagined. In the end, she had chosen.